Have you ever felt exhausted or discouraged when facing challenges in life? Maybe things didn't turn out the way you expected, or life threw you a curveball you weren't prepared for. When you face these challenges, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, helpless, or even lost. When life changes, does your faith and perspective change with it? When things are difficult, do you question your beliefs or feel disconnected from your spiritual journey? And if your faith and perspective do change, what kind of spiritual growth could those challenges bring you? What if the difficulties you're facing are actually an important part of your journey toward a deeper, stronger faith? What if, instead of seeing them as obstacles, you viewed them as opportunities for growth? Today we will explore how embracing challenges is an essential part of our spiritual journey. Often we see challenges as burdens or random events that disrupt our lives, but what if we looked at them from a different perspective? What if those very challenges are valuable opportunities for growth in faith and understanding? We're going to explore why challenges, though difficult, can help us grow closer to God, build resilience and strengthen our faith. Throughout life, we all face situations that push us to our limits. It's easy to ask, why me, or feel frustrated when our lives aren't going the way we hoped. We might even wonder why God allows such struggles. But what if there's a deeper purpose in these trials? Rather than viewing challenges as something to avoid, what if we saw them as necessary stepping stones on our spiritual journey? You may be going through challenges right now, whether it's a tough decision at work, difficulties in relationships, or even a personal crisis of faith. The weight of these moments can be heavy and it's easy to feel defeated. But what if you looked at them from a different perspective? What if each challenge is a part of your spiritual growth? What if through these experiences you're being shaped and refined in ways that will ultimately draw you closer to your higher purpose? By embracing the challenges in life, we can uncover new dimensions of our faith, learning patience, resilience, trust, and dependence on God. Just as gold is refined through fire, so too can our spiritual lives be refined and strengthened through the trials we face. These moments can teach us valuable lessons about ourselves, our relationship with God, and the way we navigate the world around us. Let's explore that together. Over the course of this video, I hope to offer you a fresh perspective on how to embrace life's difficulties and see them as part of your spiritual journey. Rather than being weighed down by the struggles you face, you can find purpose and meaning in them, knowing that they contribute to your growth as a person and a believer. If this message has been helpful to you, be sure to like and share this video so others can also experience the same comfort and encouragement. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more insightful spiritual lessons that can help you on your journey of faith and growth. Thank you for being here, and let's dive into today's message. The spiritual journey is not always easy. In fact, it is often marked by moments of struggle, hardship, and doubt. We sometimes wish for a smooth path free of obstacles, but the reality is that the journey of faith includes moments when we face challenges, hardships, and tests of faith. These moments are not just interruptions or unfortunate events, they are vital to the process of spiritual maturity. Challenges are an inseparable part of the spiritual process. Just as a tree needs both sunlight and storms to grow strong, so too do we need both the peace of God's presence and the trials of life to grow in faith and maturity. Without challenges, our faith may remain shallow and untested, never reaching its full potential. It is through facing and overcoming difficulties that we truly understand the depth of our faith, and it is through these struggles that we learn to trust God more deeply and rely on His strength. In Scripture, we see that many of the most revered figures in the Bible experienced significant challenges on their journey. Abraham was asked to sacrifice his son Isaac. Joseph was betrayed by his brothers and sold into slavery, and Job endured immense personal loss and suffering. All of these individuals faced trials that tested their faith, but it was through these challenges that they grew closer to God and understood more fully His power, love, and purpose for their lives. As believers, we must come to accept that challenges are not something to fear or avoid. Instead, they are essential for spiritual growth. Challenges refine our character, build our resilience, and deepen our relationship with God. They bring us face to face with our limitations, but they also show us how limitless God's grace and strength are. In the midst of difficulty, we are often forced to surrender control and rely more fully on God's wisdom and guidance. Challenges help us recognize our weaknesses, which ultimately strengthens our faith. When everything is going smoothly, it's easy to forget our dependence on God. We may think that we have everything under control and that our own abilities are sufficient to navigate life. However, challenges are an essential part of the spiritual journey because they expose the areas of our lives where we need God the most. Think about the example of Paul in the Bible. Paul was a man of great faith who experienced significant hardships during his ministry. He faced imprisonment, shipwrecks, beatings, and opposition from both religious leaders and secular authorities. In 2 Corinthians 12:9, Paul recounts how God responded to his request for deliverance from his struggles. But he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Paul's weaknesses became a space for God's strength to shine through. Paul came to realize that his challenges weren't a sign of God's absence, but an opportunity for God's power to be made manifest. Challenges make us more aware of our dependence on God. Without trials, we might forget how much we need Him and start relying on our own strength. When we face difficult circumstances, we are forced to recognize that we cannot do it alone. These moments of vulnerability and weakness are often the ones where God's grace is most evident. Our limitations remind us that we are not self-sufficient, but that we are deeply dependent on God for everything. Moreover, challenges reveal our character and expose hidden flaws or insecurities. Through hardship, we discover what truly matters to us, what we value most, and where we need to grow. For example, if we experience financial difficulties, we may learn to rely more on God for provision rather than on our own resources. Or if we face relationship struggles, we may find that we need to grow in patience, forgiveness, and understanding. While challenges may feel uncomfortable or discouraging at times, they serve a greater purpose in God's plan. They help us to grow in ways we would never have been able to do without them. As we rely on God to navigate through tough times, we become more attuned to His voice, more confident in His promises, and more dependent on His presence. Life's challenges are not just physical or emotional tests, they are also tests of our faith. Our faith is tested when we do not immediately see the results of our prayers or actions in alignment with God's will. In fact, the lack of immediate answers can be one of the most difficult aspects of facing challenges. We often want quick resolutions, but spiritual growth rarely happens instantly. It's in the waiting, the persevering through trials, that our faith matures. In the Bible, Abraham's faith was tested when God promised him descendants as numerous as the stars, but he had to wait years before his son Isaac was born. He was called to trust God's timing even when things didn't make sense. Abraham's patience and trust in God's promises were tested over time. It was through the waiting, the long years of trusting God's plan, that Abraham's faith grew stronger. Similarly, Job's story illustrates the profound testing of faith. Job lost everything: his wealth, his health, and his children. He questioned God's justice and struggled with his circumstances. But throughout his suffering, Job refused to curse God. Instead, he sought answers and ultimately came to a deeper understanding of God's sovereignty. In the end, Job's faith was not only restored but refined. His patience and perseverance through unimaginable suffering resulted in a stronger relationship with God and a renewed sense of purpose. Our faith is often tested in the moments when we don't see immediate results. We pray, we work, we wait, and still the answers don't come as quickly as we expect. During these times, we may wonder if God is really listening or if He cares about our struggles. But it is in this space of waiting that God invites us to trust Him more deeply. Patience is a crucial aspect of faith. It requires us to wait for God's timing, to trust that He knows what is best for us, and to believe that He is working even when we cannot see the evidence of it. Testing our faith also involves learning to accept God's will even when it doesn't match our own desires. Our challenges might not always be answered the way we expect, but they provide an opportunity for us to grow in submission to God's sovereignty. Through trials, we're invited to recognize that our understanding is limited and that God's wisdom surpasses our own. The discomfort of waiting or enduring hardship can deepen our trust in God as we come to see that His plans for us are far greater than anything we could orchestrate on our own. Faith is the foundation that supports us through every challenge. When we place our trust in God, we can face challenges with courage and hope, knowing that He is with us. Faith allows us to hold on to God's promises even when circumstances suggest otherwise. It helps us see beyond the immediate pain or discomfort and reminds us that God is working in us, through us, and for us. When we face challenges with faith, we begin to understand that God uses these moments to refine us. Trials are not random or meaningless. They are part of God's purpose in our lives. Challenges are tools that God uses to shape us into the people He has called us to be. In the process, we learn patience, perseverance, and humility, all of which draw us closer to God. In conclusion, challenges are an essential part of our spiritual journey, and embracing them with faith can lead to deep growth and transformation. Life's difficulties test our faith, reveal our weaknesses, and teach us to trust God's timing. Through challenges, we not only grow in understanding of ourselves, but also in our relationship with God. These moments of struggle are not signs of abandonment by God, but opportunities for us to rely more fully on His strength and wisdom. Rather than seeing challenges as burdens, we can begin to view them as opportunities for spiritual growth, times when our faith can be tested, refined, and strengthened. In every trial, God invites us to lean into Him more and to trust that He will guide us through the process, shaping us into the people He has created us to be. Remember that faith is not the absence of challenges, but the ability to stand firm through them, knowing that God is with us every step of the way. Life is full of challenges. We all face moments of trial, difficulty, and suffering, and these challenges often seem overwhelming at times. However, every challenge we face is an opportunity for us to develop our faith and grow spiritually. In many ways, spiritual growth cannot occur without difficulty. Just as a tree grows stronger by facing harsh winds and storms, so too do we become more spiritually mature as we navigate the storms of life. When we confront challenges, we are forced to examine our beliefs, our priorities, and our reliance on God. It is during these difficult times that we learn some of the most valuable lessons about patience, trust, and dependence on God. If life were always smooth sailing, we would have little opportunity to practice faith, to rely on God's strength, or to grow in areas like humility, perseverance, and gratitude. Spiritual growth is not a linear path. It's marked by moments of struggle and difficulty, where we learn more about God's character and His will for our lives. Challenges help us realize that we are not self-sufficient. Instead, we are deeply dependent on God for everything. Every challenge we face is an opportunity to rely more fully on Him and to experience His grace and power in new ways. The story of Job in the Bible illustrates this point beautifully. Job's life was turned upside down when he lost everything: his wealth, his health, and his family. Yet in the midst of suffering, Job's faith grew deeper. His relationship with God became more intimate, and he ultimately gained a greater understanding of God's sovereignty and omnipotence. The story of Job serves as one of the most profound examples of how challenges can lead to spiritual growth. Job was a righteous man who had everything: wealth, health, and a loving family. However, in an instant, he lost it all. He was struck by a series of tragedies that left him devastated. His children died. His wealth was destroyed, and he was struck with painful sores all over his body. His suffering was unimaginable, and his initial response was to mourn deeply, but also to trust in God. Despite his friends' attempts to accuse him of wrongdoing, and despite his own internal struggles, Job never lost his faith in God. He questioned, he wept, and he wondered why all of this was happening to him, but he never turned his back on God. Job's challenges were intense, but they did not weaken his faith. they refined it. Through his trials, Job gained a deeper understanding of God's greatness and his omnipotence. In Job 42:5, after God spoke to him, Job said, "I had heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you." Job's faith, once rooted in his understanding of God through hearsay, was now rooted in direct experience with God. His suffering had led him to a deeper, more intimate knowledge of God. Job learned to trust God even when he did not understand the reasons for his suffering. Ultimately, Job's faith was rewarded. God restored his fortunes, gave him a new family, and blessed him more than he had before. But the most significant change was that Job's faith had been refined. He was no longer the man who trusted in his own wealth or accomplishments, but a man who relied solely on God. Through Job's story, we can extract several key spiritual lessons that we can apply in our own lives. Challenges are more than just obstacles, they are vehicles for spiritual transformation. Below are a few of the powerful lessons we can learn from facing difficulties. One of the most profound spiritual lessons we learn through challenges is self-awareness and humility. When we are faced with trials, we are forced to confront our limitations and our weaknesses. We realize that we do not have control over everything and that our strength is finite. Challenges expose the areas where we rely too heavily on ourselves. They reveal where we are too self-sufficient, self-reliant, or proud. These are areas where we need to learn to humble ourselves and rely more on God. When Job lost everything, he was brought face to face with the truth of his own limitations. His wealth and status could not protect him from suffering. He could not control his circumstances, and he could not heal himself. In the same way, challenges force us to acknowledge our limitations and accept that we need God's help. Humility is the first step to spiritual growth. When we recognize that we cannot do it alone, we become more open to God's guidance, grace, and strength. We become more receptive to His will, and we begin to rely more on His sovereignty, knowing that He is ultimately in control of all things. Another important lesson learned through challenges is patience and unwavering faith. Patience is a fruit of the Spirit, and it is one of the most important qualities that God desires to cultivate in us. Through trials, we learn to wait on God's timing and trust that He is working in our lives even when we don't immediately see results. In Romans 5:3-4, Paul writes, "Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. Suffering and challenges teach us to endure and persevere, which ultimately produces a stronger character and a more hopeful outlook." This process requires patience, waiting for God to work in His perfect timing rather than rushing to find a quick solution. Job exemplifies this kind of patience. Despite his suffering, he continued to trust in God's plan, even when he could not see the outcome. His faith was unwavering, and his trust in God's goodness remained intact. Through the trials, Job learned to wait on God and submit to His will even when it was difficult to understand. When we face difficulties, we're often forced to wait for God's answers. This waiting period can feel agonizing, but it is through this time of patience that God shapes and refines us. Patience is not about passively waiting for something to happen. It is about trusting in God's timing and His ability to work in the midst of our challenges. Finally, challenges teach us about gratitude and sacrifice. When we go through difficult times, we often find that we appreciate the blessings we still have even more. Trials help us recognize the things that we may have taken for granted in the past: good health, relationships, and the love of God. In suffering, we learn to value the things that truly matter. Challenges also teach us the value of sacrifice. In times of difficulty, we are often called to sacrifice our comfort, desires, and even our sense of control. We may be asked to lay down our pride, our plans, or our personal ambitions in order to follow God's leading. True spiritual growth involves sacrifice, letting go of what we want to hold on to in order to receive something greater from God. Job's story is filled with moments of sacrifice. He lost everything, and yet he did not curse God. Instead, he worshipped and acknowledged God's sovereignty. His ability to worship and remain grateful in the midst of suffering is a powerful testament to the transformative power of faith. In our own lives, when we face challenges, we can follow Job's example and find reasons to be thankful. Even in the hardest times, we can focus on the blessings we still have and the opportunities to grow through our struggles. In conclusion, spiritual growth through challenges is an essential part of our journey with God. Challenges refine our faith, teach us patience, and help us become more self-aware. They expose our weaknesses, yet also provide opportunities to experience God's strength in new ways. Like Job, we can learn that through suffering, we not only gain deeper insight into God's character, but also grow into the people He created us to be. Through challenges, we are called to embrace humility, trust in God's timing, and learn to be grateful for the lessons that suffering teaches us. Our faith, like gold refined in fire, becomes purer and stronger through adversity. When we learn to embrace challenges as opportunities for spiritual growth, we align ourselves more fully with God's purpose for our lives, and we come to understand the depth of His love, mercy, and grace. It's easy to feel discouraged or overwhelmed when life presents us with difficulties. Challenges, by their nature, bring discomfort, uncertainty, and often a sense of powerlessness. In those moments, we may question why we're going through such difficult times, and it's natural to wish for an easier path. But as believers, embracing challenges with a positive mindset is not about denying the difficulty or pretending that things are easy. It's about accepting that these challenges are opportunities for us to grow spiritually and draw closer to God. When we face adversity, it's often the first instinct to resist it, to fight against it, or to ask why it's happening to us. However, God calls us to embrace challenges as opportunities for spiritual transformation. Each challenge, no matter how difficult, holds the potential for us to grow in faith, build our character, and deepen our relationship with God. A positive mindset during these times does not mean we ignore the struggle or pretend that everything is fine, but it means we choose to see the struggle as part of the process that shapes us into who God has called us to be. God does not promise a life free of challenges, but He does promise to be with us through them. Isaiah 41:10. In this way, challenges are not random or meaningless. They are part of God's plan to help us grow and mature spiritually. Instead of viewing challenges as burdens to bear, we are invited to see them as divine opportunities for spiritual growth, refinement, and deeper dependence on God. Having a positive attitude in the face of challenges does not mean avoiding the natural emotions that come with hardship. Feelings of grief, fear, or frustration are normal. But it does mean choosing to trust that God has a purpose in the pain and that His plans are always for our good. Romans 8:28. A positive mindset then isn't about escaping difficulties, but about recognizing that God is at work even in the hardest of circumstances. This shift in perspective helps us stay grounded in faith and enables us to face challenges with greater hope and endurance. The way we view challenges dramatically impacts how we navigate them. If we see challenges as setbacks or punishments, they become overwhelming and discouraging. But if we begin to view challenges as opportunities to grow closer to God, our mindset shifts from one of defeat to one of empowerment. The Bible is full of examples of people who faced incredible hardships, but their positive mindset and trust in God allowed them to overcome even the greatest of difficulties. For instance, Paul and Silas, imprisoned for their faith, chose to praise God and pray, rather than succumb to despair. Acts 16:25. Their response to hardship was not defeat but worship. They saw their imprisonment not as a punishment but as an opportunity to be a witness for Christ and to grow in their faith. Their positive mindset empowered them to see beyond the circumstances and focus on God's purpose in the situation. So how do we shift our mindset in the midst of challenges? Here are a few key steps. 1. Recognize the purpose in the pain. The first step in embracing challenges with a positive mindset is to recognize that God has a purpose in the pain. While we may not always understand the why behind our struggles, we can trust that God uses them for our good. James 1:2-4 encourages us to consider it pure joy whenever we face trials of many kinds, because the testing of our faith produces perseverance. Perseverance in turn leads to maturity and completeness. Challenges have the potential to refine us and build our character, making us more like Christ. 2. Trust in God's faithfulness. Shifting our mindset also requires us to trust in God's faithfulness. God has proven time and again that He is with us in our struggles, and He will never leave us or forsake us. Deuteronomy 31:6. Trusting in God's faithfulness means we know that no matter how difficult things get, He will never abandon us. His love and grace are unchanging even in the midst of hardship. Believing this truth enables us to face challenges with hope, knowing that God will sustain us through every trial. 3. Embrace the power of prayer. When facing challenges, prayer is one of the most powerful tools we have. In prayer, we surrender our struggles to God and ask for His strength. Prayer shifts our focus from the problem to the one who holds all the solutions. It's not about asking for an immediate solution to the problem, but about drawing near to God and trusting that He will guide us through it. The act of prayer brings peace and clarity in the midst of chaos, and it helps us maintain a positive mindset by reminding us that we are never alone in our struggles. 4. Reframe the challenge as a spiritual lesson. A key to shifting our mindset is to reframe challenges as spiritual lessons. Instead of seeing the difficulty as an obstacle, choose to see it as an opportunity for spiritual growth. When we face challenges, we can ask ourselves, what is God teaching me through this experience? Every hardship has the potential to bring us closer to God, and by viewing it through this lens, we begin to see God at work in our lives even in the hardest times. 5. Focus on the eternal perspective. When challenges arise, it's easy to become fixated on the temporary discomforts. However, embracing a positive mindset involves shifting our focus from the immediate situation to the eternal perspective. The Apostle Paul writes in 2 Corinthians 4:17 that our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. When we remember that our struggles are temporary and that they produce lasting spiritual growth, we gain strength and encouragement to endure. There is no better example of embracing challenges with a positive mindset than Jesus Christ's suffering on the cross. The Bible tells us that Jesus endured unimaginable pain, mockery, and isolation as He was crucified for the sins of the world. Yet despite the intense physical, emotional, and spiritual agony, Jesus did not retaliate. Instead, He embraced the challenge with love, sacrifice, and a sense of purpose. Jesus' mindset during His suffering shows us what it means to embrace challenges as part of the greater purpose God has for our lives. Jesus understood that His suffering was not pointless, it was part of God's redemptive plan for humanity. On the cross, Jesus bore the weight of our sins, showing us the ultimate example of sacrificial love. His decision not to retaliate, but instead to forgive those who crucified Him, reveals the power of embracing hardship with a positive, purposeful mindset. In Luke 23:34, Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Rather than responding with anger or bitterness, Jesus chose to respond with grace. This teaches us that when we face our own struggles and challenges, we too can respond with grace, knowing that God has a greater purpose in our suffering. Like Jesus, we can choose love over retaliation, sacrifice over self-preservation, and faith over fear. Jesus' journey to the cross was the most challenging and painful experience any human being has ever faced. But through His willingness to embrace that challenge, He accomplished the ultimate victory, the salvation of mankind. In the same way, when we embrace the challenges we face knowing that God has a purpose in them, we can trust that our trials will lead to greater spiritual growth and fulfillment. In conclusion, embracing challenges with a positive mindset is not about denying the reality of our difficulties, but about recognizing that every challenge is an opportunity for spiritual growth. When we view challenges through the lens of faith, we see them as opportunities to draw closer to God, to grow in patience, and to deepen our trust in His sovereignty. Challenges are an inevitable part of life, but they are also essential stepping stones on our spiritual journey. By shifting our perspective, embracing challenges, and looking to Christ as our example, we can face adversity with hope, knowing that every trial serves to refine our character and draw us nearer to God. Challenges may be difficult, but they are not meaningless. They are opportunities for growth, and when faced with faith and hope, they can empower us to become more like Christ. Let us remember that Jesus' example of enduring suffering with love, sacrifice, and a positive mindset shows us the way forward. As we embrace challenges in our own lives, let's do so with the same strength and grace that Jesus showed on the cross, knowing that in the end, our trials will lead to greater spiritual victory and growth. As we have seen, challenges are not only a part of life, but an essential component of our spiritual journey. It's easy to view difficulties as obstacles or burdens, but embracing challenges doesn't mean enduring them without question. Rather, it means accepting that these difficulties are opportunities for us to grow, to develop patience, resilience, and a deeper relationship with God. Each challenge we face can shape us, refine us, and bring us closer to understanding God's will for our lives. Our spiritual growth is often nurtured in the very moments when life feels the hardest. Take a moment to reflect on the challenges in your own life. How have you embraced them? When life didn't go according to plan, how did you respond? Did you see those difficulties as burdens to bear, or did you choose to look at them as opportunities to grow spiritually? Have these challenges helped you grow in faith and understanding of God? Think about how far you've come, not just in the good times, but through the tough seasons when your faith was tested. The challenges you've faced have played a role in shaping who you are today, a stronger, more resilient person in Christ. If you are facing challenges right now, don't worry. Remember that every challenge brings an opportunity for you to deepen your relationship with God and with yourself. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, but know that you are not alone in your struggles. God is with you, guiding you, and using these moments to refine your character and strengthen your faith. Stand firm in your faith. It's during the most difficult times that God's presence is often felt the most strongly. Keep trusting in His plan and continue your journey of discovery and spiritual growth. If this message has been helpful to you, be sure to like and share this video so others can experience the same comfort and encouragement. We all face challenges, and sometimes we need a reminder that they are opportunities for growth. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more insightful spiritual lessons. Together, let's continue to explore how we can grow in our faith and walk closer with God every day.